And yeah, Vever sent me something else because I'm painting my door this week and spraying it with clear coat and hardener, and I needed a buffer. Although now I have two because I didn't realize I had another new one I didn't open that was sent to me. It is what it is. Maybe I'll give one away as a prize. Welcome back to the community, everybody, and thank you all for being part of it. If you would like to make a small donation or a donation of any size, please scroll down into the description, and it helps keep the channel alive. There's a safe, secure link to PayPal. Today, we are going to go ahead and do the crankcase oil breather ventilation system. Now, I'm not going to be installing it. It's going to be a good tutorial. I will show you everything and what to do and explain why you could need it. So let's go ahead and get on it. So I'm going to go over a couple of things. I'll show you what I bought, and then we'll go ahead and show you what the installation consists of. Now, if you have a stock motor, you don't have to have one. But I will say one thing, if you're on the highways a lot and high RPMs and all that pressure, these cases carry about 30 pounds of pressure. So imagine running at high RPMs on the highway for a while. You're going to build up more case pressure, okay? So it's not a bad thing to have. Now, if you have a lot of oil leakage, I mean squirting from everywhere, and I even made a video on VWs and oil leaks. So if you have it coming everywhere, squirting out like it's just Fountain of Youth, kind of the opposite direction, then you probably should look into a breather system. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all, but the more breathing the motor does, the less leaks you're going to have. Now, a common area that they do leak out of, and I'll bring you up here. Now, for the most part, you're going to have oil coming from the back of the crankshaft seal, okay? That's a very common leak with pressure. And also on the back, your flywheel main seal. I like to call them a rear main seal, but when I do that, everybody gets freaked out. So your flywheel main seal and your front crank seal. Now, I won't get into something else today because your pulley, okay, has the snout that goes in and it'll have grooves around it. That's a slinger, okay? There's not an actual seal in the front. Now, I have one. I have a sand seal on mine for certain reasons, and we won't go down that dark alley today. No, I shouldn't have said it that way. But if you have a stock motor, there is a system that is set up, and I have a couple motors. Actually, I have 3 now, that I'll show you real quick on the stock setup because this looks slightly different. And this is all pertaining to the breathing system. Okay, this is a stock setup, okay? So this here and this here I do not have on mine, okay? There's a nipple in the front. This here, I call it the downpipe, you can call it whatever you'd like, is important. So that makes a big difference. A lot of guys will put on here those aftermarket breathers. They look like this. I'm not saying they don't help, because when it comes to crankcase pressure on these, to eliminate oil leaks and of course have it breathe better and not run as hot or spit oil in the car behind you, truthfully, every little bit helps. So if you want to put a little breather on it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't believe it does as much as what I'm going to show you. They do make different breather boxes, okay? And as you can see, I'll pop a few up right here. There's nothing wrong with them. Actually, some of them are very nice, in all honesty. Mine is already set up, so to speak, for the way it's going to be. And we're going to go over opening the package in a minute here with all the parts and go over that and show you how it's installed. But there are different systems that you can use. CB Performance sells them. I'll show you what I got from Misty at the VW store, and you choose what you want to choose. So let's go ahead, look at what I got, and go over that and go over a few more tips and tricks, things like that, and things you need to know. All right, so I'm going to show you the one that I bought. And like I said, I got this from Misty. And I'll bring you up close so you can see the part number and everything if you do choose to purchase this brand. There is the part number 00-8544-0. and that is the cast aluminum breather box with hose and hardware. Okay, this one's by Empy, and no, this is not a commercial, it's just the one I bought. So let me get it opened up and then I'll get a better camera position here. Comes with your hose and your fittings. Will go over all of it. So let me get it opened. I wanted to show you it packaged. I always do that. Although it's not fun to get out. Yeah, we're definitely going to go over a couple of things with some of these parts. Come on. Wow, they really packaged this. They weren't playing around. I must have expected like a twister to come along or something. Jeez. Okay. Well, that was a pain in the butt. So the idea of this system supposedly is it reduces crankcase pressure and eliminates blow-by and oil loss. Now, high revving or modified engines require more crankcase ventilation than the stock breather can supply. So with this aluminum breather kit, blow-by is collected in the foam filter and the air vapors are vented to the atmosphere. So here we have our breather box. I'll show you how to mount that and where. Let me take this off so you can see what's inside here. Whoop. These are 11mm bolts, which is kind of a weird size, huh? Usually it's 10 or 12, but that's what this is. That's okay. What I am going to do with this, I'm going to paint this red to match my motor, and then I'm going to scuff all the facing down, like the Empy logo, these lines. By the time I go to paint the door next week, I'll have this done and show you it. So it'll kind of pop a little bit and look like it was meant to be in the engine compartment. So we have our foam. Now the foam that is with it, and I've heard some others say this, sometimes can be a little dense. And what I mean by this is sometimes the cheaper foam elements are too stiff and dense and they won't let the air flow. So be careful with that. I may use a softer foam instead of something too dense. I hope that makes sense because this is all about airflow, technically oil flow, but airflow due to crankcase pressure. So when the air is blowing up through there, if this is too dense, and I don't mean to repeat myself, then you're going to just have oil hitting it and bouncing off of it and the air not breathing through. I hope that makes sense. So here's the hose it comes with. It's 1/2" ID. Now it says maximum 300 PSI at 70 degrees. 300 PSI. I think this was overkill. 300 PSI, but that's good. It's good that they did that. I had a kit before and the hose was kind of thin. It was a very thin hose. Now it looks to me like Empy has upgraded to a really thick hose, which is good because you want it to bend. You don't want it, I don't want to kink this. You don't want it to kink, and I'll show you where that can happen at. But Empy must have upgraded our hose, unless I just got a weird one at one time where the hose years ago, it almost felt like vinyl, like very thin, and I never used it. So they actually must have upgraded their hose on it because it's nice and thick. This is something I would go buy at like the parts store. If you choose to get a different hose, make sure it's good for oil to go through, so don't forget that. So you have your foam. I already went over that with you, what to do if you feel this is too dense, which I don't know, this one don't feel too bad. Inside, you have a strainer plate. So there's your strainer plate. It's a very easy system to deal with, but makes such a big improvement. And then of course, there is your box. So it's easy to wipe out and clean. There's nothing hard about it. So your strainer plate will go in, and then your foam. And of course, your lid. But I want to fancy this up. I'm weird like that. I want the engine compartment to look really, really cool. So, okay, here's what else you get. All right, so here's my gripe, and this is with the bigger portion of all of them. This is nothing against empty by no means at all. Here is the hose clamps you're given. Now, I know this is not high pressure. Okay, I get it. It probably hurt. The case holds about 30 pounds of pressure. These probably will work perfectly fine, okay? But I'm not a big fan of these because they seem to cut into the hose. So don't ever use them on fuel lines. What you would use is these type of clamps. I love them clamps. I have them. I don't feel like digging them out. I'm not a big fan of these. These to me are not full circle. When you start tightening them, did you ever notice they bow a little bit? Or when you crank them, it starts cutting into the rubber. This is not a fuel system, so if you need to use them, go ahead. But those are the clamps that I prefer, especially on fuel lines. But I'll keep getting off track. I gotta watch because I always have too much I want to say. Okay, and one popped out of the package, and these are what your hoses are going to go to. So, you're going to take your breather box. The holes are already in them. Now, what I like to do, you don't have to, there's no pressure on this, but anytime I want O-rings to seat nicely, I take a little, you guessed it, dielectric grease. And I just smear a little around the O-ring, not very much, but dielectric grease will not corrode rubber. Don't use axle bearing grease or anything like that. If you choose to do that, you don't have to. So when you do that in these, you're just pushing it through. You're putting your nut on. And of course, you're going to crank it tight. Don't act like a monkey. Just tighten it up normally. Don't get carried away and start stripping things out. But you see how that works. The rubber will seat against the inside of the box. And of course, your hose is going to go on to here. And just to make it clear, you'll cut the hose to where you need. It slips on there pretty tight actually, and then you'll put your clamp on it. So not a big deal. Just make sure you tighten these up good enough, and the O-ring inside should seal on the 3 sides. Now you have 3 holes in the box, okay? So 1 on each side is going to go to the valve covers, and I'll get up close and show you what I mean. And then the 1 on the front is going to go to your oil filler neck. And you have a couple options with that too. So we'll go over that next. I'm going to show you where to mount this, that it's out of your way but easy to get to and clean. And then I'm going to show you the valve covers and what you have to do. And we're going to go over a couple more things about crankcase pressure. So let's check it out. Okay, so I already have it on mine, which is kind of beneficial to show you. So I'm going to pop this valve cover off and go to the workbench with it. So let's do that next. Now, before I pop this off, I forgot to show something. I got a little anxious. You want, now this is the flywheel side of the motor. You want the fitting. This is going to have the hose run from that to the box. You want this fitting at the flywheel side of the engine. Because if you're going up hills like they run into dunes and stuff, you don't want it on this side or you're going to have oil pouring out of it. So, out of it into the hose wastefully. So you want it towards the flywheel side of the motor, and you can see about where it is towards the top of the valve cover slightly, okay? And then what you're going to do is it's going to go onto here and tighten up with the clamp. Make sure you get this tight, and like I said, use good quality clamps. I'm not a big fan of those clamps that came with it, but that's not empty. Everybody does that. Now, as you can see, the fitting is in the valve cover already, obviously. I just went over that. When you're bringing your hose from the breather box, you can either drill a hole back here and bring it down through and around, or go down through your seal, your seal that goes between the motor's tin and the body of the car. So you can squeeze the hose through, and I'll show you at the back of the car what I mean, or you can drill a hole and try to get it through and onto here without kinking it. So there's nothing fancy about this, but you do want this in the flywheel side right up like that, okay? You don't want it towards the crank side or even climbing a hill slightly. It's going to come out quickly. And all you're doing is the same that I showed you on the breather box. It's the same way. And you're basically just drilling your hole, and you're putting it in there with the rubber grommet on the inside and tightening it up. And that's all you're doing. Now, what you can use is, I call them a step bit. And that makes it easier to get to the size that you want, to get to with the hole. So let's go to the back of the car and I'm going to show you something. So we have our quick release bonnet. I'm just kidding, it ain't bolted on. Now, obviously your motor's here and you're going to want to mount this right up in here, okay? You want to put it to the point where you can get the lid off and get in there and pull everything out and clean it. Your hose is going to run over and down inside between your seal into one valve cover, and then on this side of it down through the seal, and it'll go to the other valve cover. This one here, this port coming out of here, your hose is going to come out of here and it will go down and it'll hook onto here. So you will have, this will be on the firewall, that side will go to that valve cover, this side will go to this valve cover, and this will come down onto here. Now, you're going to have this mounted on the firewall, so your hoses are going to go behind the fan shroud. Now, when you have your hose coming from here, you figure out the best direction to run the hose down to put it on here, and I'll bring you up close. You can buy different ends, and I'll put a couple up real quick here. And obviously this one's blocked off. Randy blocked it off for me so nothing bad gets in there. But this is really a nice addition. But that's where your hose will go from this side of the box. And it will come down right to here. So if in fact you have the stock motor without any custom additions and you're running dual carburetors or anything of that nature, then it can go right onto here. So valve cover, and then down to here. Now, there's a couple of other things that you can do. And when I say that, we've already went over the breather box that you could put here and things like that. If you notice that I have no fuel pump here, the reason is I'm going to probably run an electric fuel pump. Now, if you can see this cap here, they actually sell, I believe it's called a vented cap where the fuel pump goes. So then you can do some venting here also. Now, I'm not saying this kit will solve all of your issues or is a be-all end-all to your oil problems. Remember, these only hold 2.5 quarts of oil. So if you start losing oil a lot and it's squirting out everywhere, well, then, you're going to have some bad stuff go down because you don't have enough oil left in the engine. So do I recommend one of these? Absolutely. Absolutely. Remember, especially if you have a bigger motor, like a small stroker, like I'm running a 1904, then you have more crankcase pressure. So even stock ones have about 30 pound from what I understand. Anything you can do to make the engine better is a really good thing. And also, the size of your tires and your gear ratios matter. So if you have a 412 and odd size tires, so to speak, and you're churning 4,000 RPM going down the highway, more pressure. So you want to definitely relieve a lot of pressure, but make sure, and then I'll get off track if I keep going. You don't want to run too small of tires. Your RPMs are going to be up there, you know what I mean? So, and bigger tires, which I'll be running, should lower the RPM. I just said that right. What I'm getting at is the more higher the RPMs on the highways, gear ratios, tire size, you're going to build more crankcase pressure, especially if you have a stroker motor. A stock motor, not as much, but if you have oil leaking everywhere and going, I put new seals in, I've done this, I've done that, try thinking about crankcase pressure, a breathing kit. It does make a difference. And yeah, Bever sent me something else because I'm painting my door this week and spraying it with clear coat and hardener, and I needed a buffer, although now I have two because I didn't realize I had another new one I didn't open that was sent to me. I didn't go to do that. So it is what it is. Maybe I'll give one away as a prize. So if you've seen this here, that's why I now got 2 buffers. Ugh. Can you do this yourself? Absolutely. You don't need nothing special. Like I said, that step drill bit, that's for the valve covers. But all you're doing is mounting this on the firewall. I'm going to make it fancy though. I'll paint it when I paint my door and then scuff it. You'll see. You put your fittings on, one to each valve cover and one to the front of the oil filler. And you will notice somewhat of a difference. You should, because anytime you can get these crankcases relieved of a little pressure, that's a big deal, you know. And there's other ways of doing it too. I won't go too much in depth with that part because I was showing the kit that I bought and where it goes and what you do. And it's easy. You know, you're just putting some bolts through there to hold it to the firewall. And your hoses, I would buy the better clamps, but it's up to you. There's no big pressure on that, you know what I mean? So let's go over a couple of things. So remember, you got to be careful with the hose when you're running it between the motor and the seal, you know, on the body. You can even cut a little groove in the seal to get the hose through if you need to, or if you want to drill a hole in the tin like I showed you and bring it through that way. You just don't want to kink the hose, and you don't want the hose touching the exhaust pipe, or it's going to burn a hole in it, and then, ugh, you know the deal. Hot oil on an exhaust you don't want. So that was your little DIY tutorial on the crankcase breather system. There's many on YouTube. I was supposed to do this like a month and a half ago. Somebody asked me, and I completely forgot about it, but somebody brought it up in the comments. And then it triggered me to go ahead and get it done. I hate to promise stuff and not do it, although I get backed up sometimes. Okay, so I'm gonna be painting the door this week, and I've not buffed a lot of stuff. I did many years ago, but it's been like 20 years or something, so hopefully I don't burn the paint. But I'm gonna paint the door to see what it looks like. I'll speed through a lot of that film, so you're not watching me sand and stuff, you know, and we'll get that done and keep rolling along. I hope everybody has a great, safe, and healthy, happy weekend. Happy 4th of July coming up. Please be safe for the holiday. Don't drink and drive. Don't do nothing stupid. I'll see you soon.